When you've got good product, a product that is truly differentiated, a product that your customers learn to trust, that your distribution network or retailers learn to trust, uh, that becomes important. So it's product, product, product. Then you build the trust with that product, build the trust in the marketplace, both at retail and consumer end of it, and you keep improving, and you keep listening to people.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited to have as my guest today Charlie Clifford, the visionary entrepreneur and founder of Tumi, the global leader in premium luggage and travel bags. Charlie started this business in 1975 with just over $10,000 and a passion for quality, and transformed Tumi from an importer of Colombian leather bags into a brand synonymous with innovation and excellence. Today, Tumi is sold in over 75 countries and cherished by business executives, professionals, and celebrities alike. In 2016, the company was acquired by Samsonite for $1.8 billion. Charlie's entrepreneurial journey began when he got a bachelor's degree in English and then an MBA in marketing from Indiana University, followed by a transformative stint in the Peace Corps, where he lived in Peru and worked on economic development projects. Inspired by his time there, he named Tumi after a Peruvian pre-Columbian god. Since retiring from Tumi in 2004, Charlie has continued to innovate, co-founding Rome, a premium bespoke luggage brand that empowers customers to design their own custom-made luggage crafted in Vidalia, Georgia. His dedication to craftsmanship and design has earned him numerous accolades, including the Distinguished Entrepreneur of the Year award from Indiana University's Kelley School of Business. Let's unravel the fingerprints of success of Charlie Clifford, the founder of Tumi. Hey, everybody, welcome to Fingerprints on Success. I'm so glad you could be with us today. My guest is Charlie Clifford, the original founder of Tumi Luggage, right? The household name brand luggage that you see everywhere in the world, every airport in the world. And I'm so thrilled, Charlie, that you were willing to come on the show today. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure to be talking with you, Bill. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so my pleasure, really. And I want to start with the story, right? Every entrepreneur in as you know, our audience are all entrepreneurs. Everybody starts with, a place in time. And from what I understand, in 1975, with $10,000, you start what is now a multi-billion-dollar company. Tell us how the birth of this idea and this business for you.
Well, like there aren't many people who grow up wanting to be in the luggage business, and I certainly can count myself in that universe. Like most people growing up, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I grew up in a small town, about 5,000 people, Bergen County, northern New Jersey, and uh, it was kind of like we were only 25 miles from Manhattan, but it was like night and day. Manhattan, of course, was huge and thriving and bustling and lots going on. Our small town was more like a Norman Rockwell town. Uh, we're pretty homogeneous in terms of demographics, uh, conservative values, traditional values, but it was a good foundation. Made some great friends from my Midland Park days. Uh, Competed in sports, did the normal things that a small town kid would do. Spent my first year at Seton Hall University and had a great first year. I was able to be a walk-on for the basketball team and the baseball team. I certainly wasn't going to be a varsity athlete, but I had a good time extending my high school career. But it was a commuting college, and I was living off campus with a couple of upperclassmen, and I decided I wanted a more typical college campus experience. So I started looking at schools around the country and decided I didn't want to go into the southern part of the country. I started looking at the Midwest and looked at Penn State and Ohio State. Finances were important, but my family didn't have a lot of money. So we got to Indiana, and something about what I read about Indiana intrigued me. Went out and took a look at it and ended up transferring to Indiana University. Majored in English. Uh, I finished my undergraduate career. I met my wife to be as a senior. We were both dorm counselors together. And I recall on the first meeting when the staff was being introduced, I was struck by the way she introduced herself and made up my mind, she was somebody I wanted to get to know. And almost 60 years later, 58 years later, we're still happily married, fortunately. But I went on to stay in business school. I majored in English and knew I wasn't going to be a great writer or an academic. So I decided to uh, pursue a business career and stayed on in Indiana, the graduate business school. Uh, and a very fortuitous encounter is a long story about how I got there. I was up at the placement office signing up for interviews, typical product management opportunities with General Mills, Procter and Gamble, General Foods, etc. And one of my classmates said he had discovered a Peace Corps program that was being sponsored in conjunction with the Stanford Business School, and they were sending a group of going to be sending a group of MBAs to Peru, South America, and he thought it was an interesting opportunity. And I looked into it, decided to apply, and my wife was very enthusiastic, so we joined. Uh, and after a couple of years in South America, I came back and ended up in industrial marketing for almost 5 years before investing in a tiny little company that was importing handcrafted products from South America, being run by a former Peace Corps associate director of Peru when I was there. Uh, One thing led to another. After less than a year at the company, I realized it was involved in too many different product categories, too many different channels, marketing channels, uh, too many countries that were supplying the products. So I suggested we focus on leather goods. The two people who own most of the company decided they wanted to continue with their current plan because they felt an obligation to their suppliers, and they had an arrangement where they were serving as a South American agent for Marshall Field and Company for handcrafted products. So with their blessing, I left and found somebody who came along with me. He was actually not part of that company, but a different company. And two of us founded Tumi in 1975. Uh, at that point, we had no reservations, no itinerary. I just thought we could figure it out as we went along. And that's one of the things you get out of an experience like the Peace Corps. You're essentially dropped into a foreign environment. Don't speak much of the language. Barely can get around and order meals. You have to figure it out. You have to figure out what you're going to do, how you're going to be productive, how to fit into the culture, learn from the culture, learn from the people. And that was kind of the spirit with it, which after my start to a business career, I decided I'd like to do something entrepreneurial and ended up founding Tumi based on the fact that I thought leather goods was the most promising product category from the company that I was involved with at the time.
So how do you get so yeah, you have this idea, you think leather goods are the way to go. What happens next? What's the, because obviously this is quite a journey that you were beginning to embark on. You start a business, so you have, by definition, you have no customers, but you have an idea. How does it go from an idea to a business?
Well, I think I had an idea of what the business could be like, but it was a very vague idea. It was not. I'm embarrassed to say we had no business plan, no feasibility study, just a sense that we could learn along the way, and by talking to people, by being curious, and by with a lot of energy and time and effort, we could make it work. So essentially, the first exposure to the marketplace is we went to a trade show in Florida. There was a trade association called the Luggage and Leather Goods Manufacturers of America, and the of America was important because companies that were making products outside of the U.S. were not particularly welcome. We were tolerated at the time, but we weren't welcome with open arms because the association was basically led by a number of entrepreneurs, family-owned companies, some of them second, third generation, and it was a good old boys network of as any group of people in the same industry becomes. I became part of that network after a couple of decades myself. But at that time, we were upstarts. I was naive enough that we called the company Tumi Imports rather than just Tumi. The imports was a red flag to many of my association fellow members.
Right. You were
But
you were
they had a
giving it
trade
away
show.
that you were breaking the code.
I was breaking the code. I didn't realize it at the time. But they had a trade show. I think we signed up this January. They had a trade show coming up the next month, and I'll never forget the executive director of the association. I was sitting in his office, and he said, "Well, we can get you space at the trade show. What's the name of your company?" At that point, we hadn't really picked out a name, so I wasn't going to admit that. I said, "Well, basically, we've got several names we're considering. Give me a day or two, and we'll come back to you. We'll finalize our choice." And I went home and I talked to my partner at the time, and I thought we should call the company Tumi from the beginning. The Tumi Imports was sort of an accidental add-on, but the Tumi was the symbol of the department in Peru where we lived and worked for a couple of years. It was a pre-Colombian knife with a rounded edge. It was an idol figure with a rounded edge at the bottom that they used for reportedly for brain surgery, and I guess with some sacrifices along the way as well. It was a distinctive symbol. It was very well known in Peru, and I liked the name, and I thought people might think it was an Italian name and was unusual. No issue with getting a trademark for the name. So we went ahead and we called it Tumi. Went to the trade show, and I noticed at the trade show that there was a stand right across from us that was leather bags, two-tone leather bags under the brand name Land. And Land at that time, I found out at that trade show and afterward, was a very popular leather goods line developed by several entrepreneurial types, one of whom was also a former Peace Corps guy. They were making leather bags in Colombia. And the reason that Land was doing so well is they had set up a group of manufacturers reps. And the manufacturers reps were independent agents who basically had connections with the retailers around the country. They typically represented multiple product lines, multiple companies, and they had products that they went around and offered working on a percentage basis rather than a flat fee or a salary. And by aligning yourself with good manufacturers reps, you could get an entree to the retailers who were used to working with these people because they did a good job of bringing them interesting products and taking care of their needs. So that was our entree. The trade show, beginning to set up a network of manufacturing reps, improving year by year. At the beginning, we were happy to have anybody who was willing to take on our line. As time went on, we were able to pick and choose a little bit more, and ended up with just a terrific group of manufacturers reps, some of whom joined the company full time as full time Tumi salespeople when we could afford to bring them on full time.
At what point along the way did you kind of transition into where you were doing full on luggage, right? I mean, there must have been like an evolution where you went from the leather goods, leather bags to transition into to the kind of that next phase.
Well, we had two groups of initial leather bags. One group was just a few styles, and they were very rugged, rustic kind of leather. It was an unfinished leather. It had a pungent odor to it, but it was unusual. It was different looking. It definitely said it was leather. There was no doubt about it. Then we had another group of leather bags that were finished leather. They were more refined, more elegant. It turned out the market interest was in the first group, the group that was more rustic and rugged. And we rode that wave for 6 or 7 years, where it kept growing. Our initial best-selling leather bag was a 21-inch duffel bag, and it didn't have a lining in it, but it was good looking and was priced at $59.95 originally. That'd be a $500 bag today's dollars. It was well priced then, but it may have been, we were probably below market because we were a little bit timid about pricing, but it certainly was a great price value for the time. We began doing more serious luggage about 8 years later, in 1983 or so. One of my contacts from the original company that was making handcrafts had joined Tumi as our designer. We first sent him to Colombia, where he worked with our factory. He was a liaison, and it turned out that he really was interested in designing bags. He was a homegrown designer. He didn't have any formal training, but he had terrific taste and a good feeling for proportions and shapes. And he became our designer. His name was Jeff Bertelsen. And Jeff, after a couple of years in Columbia, said, it's time for me to come back. I want to come back, and I think I can help. I'll oversee product development and design, and I'll work with the suppliers. And we found a place for him because he was a terrific guy, one of the pillars of the original Tumi. And Jeff came up with a design of U-shaped pockets that we put on garment bags. We put it on briefcases or brief bags, we call them. We put it on carry-ons and shoulder bags. And Tumi became known as a company that had these U-shaped pockets that open like an upside-down hatch onto a boat. And when that flap came open, you had visibility and accessibility to the contents. It was easy to pack, easy to unpack, and a distinctive design. And we moved from leather to ballistic nylon because we realized that leather, while it was a very desirable material, there were lots of consumers who weren't particularly comfortable checking leather bags and using it for serious travel. They were afraid it would get scuffed and marked, and it wouldn't look like it looked when they purchased it. We call that a patina, and a well-worn leather bag or fabric bag or even a hard shell case, that's a sign of an experienced traveler. But because in those days we didn't think we could build a company around leather bags, so we were looking for different materials, and we discovered ballistic nylon. We weren't the first to use it, but we were the first company to make it a big commercial success. And it was because of a combination of material and design. The designs were innovative, they were popular, they were both good looking and highly functional, and they performed well over time. The material wore beautifully, and people would buy our bags and use them for years and years.
Charlie, one of the things that I think people are fascinated with, and I think our listeners love to hear about, you know, you're talking about the evolution of a business as you continue to grow it. And obviously there were key people and key ideas along the way. But the thing that people find so hard to do, and you did it in a big time way, is to scale a company. Like, how do you take something as an entrepreneur and you're getting it off the ground, you're growing it? And I know you said at first you had these independent reps that were very helpful, and and good people and good design. But, if somebody, in the last many years, they go to an airport, they see Tumi. They go to a high-end mall, they see Tumi. They like it is, you built a household name, world recognized brand. How does one scale it from a successful company to a multi-billion dollar company? Were there some secrets along the way, or kind of like approaches you took that helped you grow and scale like that?
Well, I don't know, I would call them secrets. I think there are things that most entrepreneurs do when they're scaling a company. Uh, for real estate, they say it's all about location, location, location. For us, it was product, product, product. I certainly didn't have a design background. I had to learn to recognize good design and what good design and styling was. I had to learn to recognize what good components were. But uh, I did learn along the way. I had many good teachers. Uh, uh, and I think that when you've got good product, a product that is truly differentiated, a product that your customers learn to trust, that your distribution network or retailers learn to trust, uh, that becomes important. So it's product, product, product. Then you build the trust with that product, build the trust in the marketplace, both at retail and consumer end of it, and you keep improving, and you keep listening to people, and you can never be satisfied. We somewhere along the way, I read about the Japanese concept of Kaizen, and Kaizen is basically a concept of continuous improvement. Design is never really done. When Jeff Bertelsen, our original designer, left the company for a couple of years, there was a period in the I guess from '83 to '85 where I was involved in an effort to buy out my original partner. It took some time for us to reach an agreement. And Jeff left the company during that period, went to Samsonite, And when he left, I said, I sure hope you come back someday when we get this sorted out. And that was the first phone call I made after I did complete the purchase of my partner's shares. But I said, Jeff, we'd like you to come back. And when Jeff was with us, he would complain now and then that designs were never fixed. Designers like to create something and fix the design and go on to the next thing, but we kept improving it. We do the best we could based on the input we had. We go out to the marketplace. We get feedback from dealers, from their salespeople. We're getting feedback from the customers, and we keep tweaking it. And we learn to celebrate our successes, but never be satisfied and be aware of the fact that there are other people who are trying to outdo us, who are going to catch up and pass us if we ever became satisfied. I think hubris is the biggest enemy of entrepreneurs. If you know the various steps along the way towards creating a lasting brand, and sometimes it's easy to mistake success at one of those steps with long-term success. It takes a lot of effort, great people, great product, and some luck along the way to be successful. We had all of those things.
Yeah, you sure did. When you reflect back, do you think there are certain mindsets that you had, just like way of thinking or approach that you took that when you look back, you say, it was because of this that made a huge difference for us, or this way of thinking or this mindset kind of gave us the upper hand. And when I look back, that's something I would tell an entrepreneur that was part of that success. So you think you had any particular mindset like that?
Well, you've always got to be conscious of what's an appropriate price value relationship for the product you're selling to the people you're trying to sell it to your target consumers. Uh, However, I think early on we recognized. I shouldn't say early on. It took us 7 or 8 years before I started to recognize that we hadn't done a good job of targeting consumers. That we were selling strictly on the basis of personal relationships and price value. Uh, once I realized that was the case, and we asked Jeff to come up with a new design concept, and he shut himself in his cubicle at the time and did lots and lots of different drawings that came up with Tumi's iconic design, which is still being used today. We realized that value is something that it's different things to different people, and we always felt that if we could add features that would provide a benefit that people would appreciate, we could increase the price accordingly, and the price value would always be in line as long as the features we added and the commensurate benefit that was given to consumers, as long as they matched up. So we kept improving the products. We determined our market during that period with our target consumers were frequent travelers, and they were people who were willing to pay for a better mousetrap, a better piece of luggage in this case. They were traveling so frequently that luggage became their a companion. It was best friend. They packed it the same way every time. They wanted to be able to count on it. They wanted to look good, feel good, and be confident that their luggage was going to arrive in one piece and look good when it arrived.
Well, I'm laughing because I have a Tumi carry-on bag that I travel a pretty good bit for my profession as a lawyer, and it's a bag that is a garment bag, but that you can pack other things in it, just big enough that you could get a good few days worth of stuff in it, but just small enough that you could still get it in the overhead. And it's like just an unbelievable piece of luggage. And I actually have like a backup because I was afraid if it ever got discontinued that I actually bought two. so I'm always grateful that have been your attorneys for many reasons, but one was the fact that we got treated like employees with our luggage purchases, which I'm always grateful to you for.
Well, uh, yeah, one of the things we learned along the way is that no matter how good the components are, how carefully the bags are made, once you turn your luggage over to a transport company, to the baggage handlers, and to the conveyor systems that they're put on, Luggage is susceptible to being damaged, no matter how well you make it. So we figured out that one of the best marketing tools we could do was to do the right thing for our customers. We did it because we wanted to keep our customers happy, and then it became a. We realized later when we started looking at the cost of doing it was not inexpensive, but we realized it was a great investment because we're not only keeping our customers happy, they would spread the word. They would tell people that we're making a product that we stand behind, and that's something that we're carrying through in today's current endeavor.
Was that the lifetime guarantee?
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Lifetime guarantee doesn't mean that your luggage, like your car, never has to go in for maintenance or for repair. And a lifetime guarantee means that the manufacturer is responsible for any defective components in the piece. But you stand behind it, you do the right thing for your customers, and most people are fair. They understand the difference between a product that's been damaged because of abuse and a product that's been damaged because a component has failed. And it's part of establishing a premium brand is that you take care of your customers and you want them to come back to you again and again and again. And I think that's a good recipe for success.
Yeah. When you reflect back, the flip side is always important to know too, right? Which is what are some of the things maybe that when you look back, if you could do it all over again, or if Charlie today could tell Charlie, you know, decades ago, hey, don't do this, or this isn't going to be a good idea, or we should definitely watch out, to not step into that bear trap. What's some advice that you'd give our listeners on kind of the things you wouldn't do again if you had to go back?
Well, one of the things that we did, a couple of things, I guess. One thing we did, we I think it was 1988 or 89, when we were still a very young brand. A friend of mine from the Peace Corps came to us, and he was moving to England, and he said he wanted to. Uh, he thought he perhaps could work with us and could become our partner in Europe to help introduce the brand to Europe. We encouraged him. We helped him to get started. It didn't work out, and the reason it didn't work out is we weren't ready. We weren't ready as a brand. We weren't ready with product. We weren't ready as a company. So we got a bit over our skis and trying to uh, grow too fast to move into the international marketplace before we had really figured out what we were doing in the USA. It wasn't a big mistake, but it was something we learned along the way. Is that you know try not to do too many things, focus on what's most important, and take it step by step as opposed to moving too rapidly. There are people mistakes that we made along the way, but I think our batting average with good people, getting the right management team and support staff in was pretty darn good. I think you can't overstate the importance of creating a good team. Uh, I started in business and I had a partner for the first 8 years in business, and I did that because I wanted somebody who'd be able to focus on the administrative part of the business, the finance, the day-to-day operations. Ended up overseeing the sourcing, and that worked out well because I was able to focus on the front end of the business and the marketplace, and was very involved with product. But we had a team. When that team wasn't functioning as well, and we made a decision that, I made a decision that I wanted to buy him out. I started bringing in other people who could complement my skills and who were better than I was at various aspects of the business because you can't surround yourself with too many smart people as long as they're willing to make a commitment and work as a team. Uh, I think that we had many vigorous discussions about strategy, product, etc. And I always prided myself on the fact that we were able to entertain different points of view. I think that was one of our strengths is that we created an all-star team of middle and senior executives, and the people who were working below them were wonderful support people. And those differences of opinion sometimes caused us to take longer to make a decision to figure out what we wanted to do. But because we had the debates, and sometimes they were very lively, vigorous debates, we'd lick our wounds and come back and talk about it again. And by the time a decision was made, we had usually had very good buy-in. Even the people who were disappointed that their point of view didn't carry the day, they realized they had been heard, they had a seat at the table, and so they were willing to work as a team to implement whatever decision had been reached.
That's a really interesting thing too, because culturally, it sounds like you created an environment where not only was it okay to have an opinion or a differing view, but a lot of times when you're the leader of a company, you're the entrepreneur, you're the founder, you're the leader. Sometimes the wrong people or maybe the wrong culture, people are afraid to contradict the boss, right? Like if they think you're going in a certain direction in certain organizations, people would kind of want to figure out where you're trying to go and follow suit because they haven't built a culture that encourages honest disagreement and debate. And it sounds like that you created a culture where it was okay to disagree and to express different views and ultimately to get to a better place as a group.
Interesting comment. Sometimes new people, particularly as we got into the '90s and we started bringing in some people who had different experiences, more senior people, they were a little taken aback by the candor and the willingness to fight for one's point of view. It was, I think, unsettling to a few people at the outset, but they quickly realized that was part of the culture, and that even though we might disagree vigorously, that we were still friends. We'd come back and we'd repair whatever hurt feelings there were the next day. We'd work together to bring the company forward.
Yeah. Well, and more importantly, too, there was no retribution, right? It was the kind of thing where, you could have that debate and rigorously defend your view. And if you ended up not on the winning side, so to speak, it wasn't like anything got held against you professionally either. It was you were encouraged to express yourself, which I think is a really good and interesting and healthy point because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that kind of rule with an iron fist and don't create a culture like that. So I just think it's important for people to kind of hear that and I mean the success that it brought to you is really unmatched. So very interesting point. So flipping
Another,
yeah,
just to elaborate, another
sure.
characteristic is that I was very comfortable talking to people down two or three levels and getting their point of view. Some of the best input we had about product and about consumers' preferences came from salespeople in the stores, not the store manager, not the owner, not in the case of department stores, not senior executives, but people on the selling floor who knew what was going on. Uh, we had our operation in Vidalia, Georgia, and there are times I'd go down there that when we were running a night shift, I would go on into the distribution center and talk to the people who were picking and packing the orders in the evening because they had a perspective that was different from the people who were doing it in the daytime. So yeah, you're lucky if you have people around you who will give you honest feedback. That's I think a prerequisite for success, and it's dangerous if you're surrounded by people who are only saying what they think you want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, that's something, obviously I've been a lawyer to entrepreneurs my entire career. And when I talk to entrepreneurs, one of the things that that they'll talk about as a frustration is being able to get people to continue to have the same candor and honesty and express their opinion because they don't want to be the smart, quote, the smartest person in the room, and they want to get the perspective of other people. And sometimes people that are subordinate to the founder or the owner are afraid, to step out of line, if you will. And again, I kind of go back to you have to create a culture where people know it's okay to do that. It's in fact it's encouraged.
Yeah,
Um, so
but
very
I think
interesting.
I think that's a an attitude, if you will, that's more encouraged in U.S. business than it is around the world. Beginning in 1989, 1990, I spent made a number of trips. I was traveling to Europe six, seven times a year for typically a couple of weeks at a time, making multiple trips to Asia. And neither in Asia nor in Europe, I think, is there the willingness, if you will, for people who are down in the ranks, a level or two or three, to say what they think to those who are higher up. There's much more of a hierarchical perspective, if you will, a way of doing business in those countries.
Interesting. So shifting gears on something, when you look back, um, do you have any people that you think of that were mentors to you that you, when you reflect on your success in your career, you say, you know, if it wasn't for this person and for the impact they had on me or what they taught me or the direction they gave me, maybe I wouldn't have had the level of success that I've had if it had not been for someone important like that and going back.
Well, I'm very, very grateful for the specialty store owners and operators who, during the late '80s and the '90s, really got behind Tumi. And after spending the first 10 years of our business giving us advice as to what to do and not to do, when it started to come together, when we found the winning formula based on a terrific product design, they really got behind the brand. And they provided all kinds of advice and all kinds of support, too many to name. You know, uh, there was the Borsak family that ran the El Portal group of stores. They ended up with 30 or 40 stores in the western part of the country. Kenny Young and his family, who ran the Bentley's operation, they had over 100 stores, 130 or 40 stores at one time. There were several people at Bloomingdale's. I should mention also the Reinigers, who ran Edwards Luggage, who ran a very high-end luggage store, a group of stores in Northern California. These are people who share their knowledge about merchandising, about what's necessary at point of sale, and product, and encourage us, you know, in multiple ways. Bloomingdale's was the department store that was perhaps most instrumental in taking the brand to a different level. There was a buyer who gave us our first opportunity. His name was Carl Schott. He was succeeded by Warren Reicher, who was a longtime buyer who supported us for probably 15 years or more. Uh, Upper management, Jerry Applebaum was a divisional merchandise manager, and Lester Grabetz was the vice chairman of Bloomingdale's. These people took a personal interest in the brands that they thought were promising, and they spent time with you. They talked to you. Lester at one point asked me how we're doing with Bullock's, Bloomingdale's counterpart on the West Coast, and I said, well, we're doing okay, but we could do a lot better. I immediately wrote a letter to Alan Questrom, who was running Bullock's at the time, said you should take a look at this brand. It's up and coming. Alan introduced me to Terry Lundgren, who at that time was a general merchandise manager, later became president of Neiman Marcus and CEO of Federated Group, Macy's and the Federated Group. So
Sure.
these are all people who took a chance on a brand that had promise but was still learning the ropes, so to speak, and in different ways they helped us along the journey.
Amazing. So
I should mention
obviously,
one other thing is that when I was buying out my original partner, we didn't have a very good balance sheet. We had been coasting along, doing well, growing every year. We ran into the stagflation of the early '80s, when interest rates were in the upper teens. Prime rate was 18, 20%. And we lost money for one quarter, and our bank wasn't very happy. So they put us in the asset recovery. We learned we were in the asset recovery department when they asked us to come to Philadelphia for a meeting. And it was the first time we had been to their offices at this location. And we got off the elevator, walked down the floor, and found the proper room number. And over the transom, there was a sign in traditional bank lettering, asset recovery department. So we knew things were changing. But that was a period which caused me to reflect on where are we going to go, how are we going to get there. It was very uh, challenging, but perhaps a bump in the road that if it hadn't come along, who knows what would have happened. But during that period, I made a decision to buy out my partner. and started bringing people into the company who had different skills than I had. And I think that was a turning point for the company.
So Charlie, obviously, you sold your interests in Toomey, and like most serial entrepreneurs who spent a lifetime building a business, you're on to other things these days. And I would love to hear about what you're working on now and what's got you excited when you get up every day.
Well, I've been gone from Tumi now for it's been 20 years. It's hard to believe because we were and someday, for a while it seemed like I just left. Now it seems further in the distance, but many of the memories are still very fresh, and many of the friendships that were developed during those days are still there. But I knew I wasn't going to sit around and do nothing. I'm not a golfer. I never took the time to learn how to play golf. Uh, I reached the point where I wasn't playing tennis was not something I could do every day without having sore joints. Uh, so I was looking for another. I guess where do you go next? And my executive VP at Toomey had left Toomey in 2006, so we decided to form a company together where excuse me, whereby we would work with some European brands that had a good product concept and wanted to enter the U.S. market, but didn't really know how to do it. So that's what we did for a number of years. And I guess it was about 2017, 18. A couple of retailers came to us and said they had set up an operation to make luggage in the U.S. They weren't having much success with it. They were selling it well in their stores, but they were unable to place it into other retailers. And they asked if we might be able to give them some help. So Larry Lean and I talked to them about what they were doing. We felt there was some promise. We liked the idea of creating a premium brand of luggage that could be made in the USA. And we talked to them about how we might tackle this opportunity. We ended up scrapping their original design and changing the name of the company, basically setting up a new company. And it was based on assembling luggage in America, whereby customers could choose their own color combination and create a signature look, create a bespoke piece of luggage that would reflect their own personality, their own sense of style, and essentially give them, I guess, the feeling of pride and satisfaction that you get with using a product that you've created and a product that would be easy to travel with and identify at the baggage carousels, and they could use for many, many years. So that's how it started. That we were approached by a couple of retailers. We looked at what they were doing. We said we think we can help you. We can work with you, but we're going to go back to the drawing boards. How we do this. We signed up an industrial design firm in New York. They worked with us to come up with a unique design, and we were off to the races. Uh, it's been challenging in the sense that the marketplace has changed in the intervening years since I left Toomey. Many of the specialty stores that helped us develop the brand have either been sold, consolidated into other operators, or they've closed. Some of the long family businesses that have been two or three generations closed either after 9/11, before I left Toomey, or during the financial crisis, or during or after the pandemic. So the specialty stores that have survived are good operators. They've learned how to deal with adversity, uh, but there are no longer 7 or 8 or 900 different good specialty operations in America. There are many fewer today. Uh, with this in mind, we decided that we would enter the marketplace as direct to consumer, with building the business around e-commerce and selling via the internet directly to consumers. It's challenging in that you don't have the opportunity for people to look at it, touch and feel the product, to test the wheels, to test the handles, and see it in an environment where they're comparing with other products. So you have to tell your story via your website and via other communication means through the internet. We've managed to survive the pandemic, and are growing again after a couple of very difficult years. But we've made a decision that we're going to open up the marketplace and will strategically be selling to some of the remaining specialty retailers and department stores because we like the idea of meeting the consumer where she's shopping and making it possible to see our product and compare it easily with other brands.
That's great. And so now, if and all the products are made in America.
We assemble in America. We have some components from America, but most of the components are made overseas because that's the luggage industry moved its manufacturing to Asia. It started it was starting in the 70s when we had our little importing venture. It became stronger in the 80s, and by the 90s, virtually all luggage was being made overseas in Asia, in China or one of the surrounding countries. So we have components that come from overseas because that's where the components are made. The supply chain it ends up centering around where the manufacturing is being done. We bring the components that we're sourcing from around the world into the U.S. We assemble them in Vidalia, Georgia, which is the same location where where Tumi operated for many years. Tumi is still operating in Vidalia.
That's great. Now, if people and our listeners want to find out more about that product or see it, how would they find you? What's tell us everybody a little bit about the brand and where to find it online?
Well, we've had over the years we've had actually quite a lot of press coverage because that many of the people in the lifestyle and fashion magazines, travel media, they've been intrigued by the idea that somebody could actually design a unique piece of luggage that will reflect their own taste and create a signature look, as I mentioned earlier. So they might be aware of us through the press coverage. We also do our share of digital advertising on the internet, but our website is www.rome luggage. That's ROAM luggage.com. And on our website, we do the best job we can of explaining what the luggage is all about. Quality components assembled in the USA, built to last for years and years and years. We do have a lifetime guarantee on it against any defective components or defective workmanship, and we stand behind the product.
It's awesome. Well, Charlie, listen, I don't want to take any more of your time. I'm so grateful to have you on the show today. I'm sure that our listeners will really get a lot out of hearing your story. And personally, as the CEO of Mandelbaum Barrett, I also want to thank you for all your years of loyalty to our firm, going all the way back to the early days of Tumi and continuing to this very day. So thank you so much again for coming on the show today.
Well, good legal advice is something that most young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial companies are trying to limit their legal expenses,
True.
as you well know. But I can tell you from personal experience that having a good attorney, somebody who's able to provide appropriate counsel at times you need it, is an investment that entrepreneurs should not forego. It's money well spent, and we feel fortunate that we've had the services of Steve Holt and your firm for so many years.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks again for coming on the show.
All right, Bill. Thank you.